1 week season.
Hey, and welcome in, OWS fam. So glad you are with us here on the DFS Lab. We're back in the lab and ready to continue to look here at the upcoming Week 6. As always, the purpose of the show is to build a DraftKings lineup and use it as a vehicle to talk through the upcoming slate. And looking at Week 6 here, you'll be watching this as always Thursday around noon Eastern time. We're recording it Wednesday night. It's around 10:30 Eastern on Wednesday night. I'm your host, Cheeseman. And welcoming up StatATL. Stat, how's it going, man? And how was Week 5?
Geez, it's going great, my friend. I see that I have shaved off the facial hair, and you have decided to embrace it this week as well. So
I'm keeping it. Yeah, I'm continuing to keep it going for now. We'll see. We'll see how quickly it's ruled out. The boss says something about it.
I feel that. Week 5 was good for me. Positive week. Just one of those. I feel like JM kind of says this. I don't want to say a lot, but like from time to time on his Winner Circle pods, which Inner Circle members are familiar with what I'm talking about, where he's just like, well, I had the right plays, just all the right pieces didn't come together on a roster this week. So for me, it was a winning week, but I had 4 rosters that eclipsed 200 points, and I think I shared a couple of them with you actually as well. Like every one of them had a dud, had a player who scored 5 or less points on it, and it's just like when you eclipse 200 and you have somebody that's like almost a zero, especially on a week like this where most tournaments were won at like 215, 220 points. Like I think the Millie was like 235. And that's like, 100,000 entrants or whatever. So like most contests are won at like 215. And it's like, great, I've got a 203-point roster that had a 4 on it. Just imagine if like I could have just gotten a 15, and these aren't on punt 3K plays. Like these are on, actually 3 out of the 4 had Dontavion Wicks, who was like a 5K player and scored 4 points.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, you get 15 points for like, if that roster we had gone Josh Downs at the same salary, like, now I'm scoring 218 or something, and now we're having a totally different conversation about this week or week 5.
Yeah, man. I hope one of these weeks where we are talking about, reflecting on a big takedown of some kind. That would be awesome. But yeah, man, I hear you. That is really frustrating when Wicks is someone who you really expected was going to get you probably at least 8 to 9 as a floor, and what did he end up getting, like 4 or 5?
Yeah, 4 point something.
Yeah, and he dropped some passes too. So, yeah, that is disappointing. That's really worse than just losing bad and just kind of like moving on and just kind of washing the taste out of your mouth. Instead, just realizing how close you were to something so much bigger.
Yeah, I know that Hilo had a milli sweat going. I think he was like 190 going into the late games with 2 players to go. So, that's always exciting when you've got a live sweat. And, for me, I prefer it when it's in a single entry contest because those are a little easier to win. But, I was pulling for him. So,
yeah,
I think it was a strong week for OWS in general. I think I saw a lot of good rosters on my roster review show sent in of people scoring 180, 190, 200. Strong week. I think we really hit on a lot of the really sharp and under-owned plays that ended up, I don't want to say overachieving, but kind of being some of the you had to have it type plays.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely was a strong week at 1 week season. Just the focus on the Baltimore and Cincinnati game that just was a hard game to build for. But, that you had to have some pieces from that game. Jamar Chase scoring 44, that was something you definitely needed. So let's take a quick look at last week's lineup. Let me just add it up here. And this is the lineup we built last week. And we checked before the show started. This cashed in single entries, correct?
Yep, scored I think 163.8, 163.9, something like that. And generally in most single entries, like the cash line was like 151, 152. So, I think I entered this in like a $5 or $12 single entry. I didn't go pull it up out of my rosters. But yeah, I think we're we're now 3 out of 5 weeks with at least a min cash on our on stream roster. So certainly try to keep that going.
Yeah, man, we'll absolutely take it. Had the key Brian Thomas Jr. play there, he was definitely a big key. And of course, Tucker Kraft, I mean, by far the highest owned tight end on the slate. And he smashed. I mean, sometimes tight end is chalky, and sometimes those chalky tight ends, they absolutely blow up, and he did. So, yeah, I mean, solid overall. Obviously, Jordan Love didn't have a ceiling game, and neither did Jaden Reed, but certainly it was still the potential for that was there. And I mean, that game between the Packers and Rams just wasn't quite as high scoring as I don't think I expected it would be. But both teams do like to run the ball if they have the opportunity. Also had the defensive touchdown there. So, but I mean, if Love and Reed had a bigger game, this one, and Kenneth Walker too, man. I mean, this lineup for cashing with 163. Just look at how much higher it could have gone if some things had gone differently.
Yeah, and that's I think kind of at the essence of what we're trying to do. And what I try to teach on the roster review is just we're just trying to build good lineups so that when things do break your way, you're constructed in a way that you could win. That it's not a complete lottery ticket where you've got 9 dart throws, and obviously those can win too. Actually, those are the type of rosters that typically win the Millie Maker type, the lotto contests.
Yes.
But on this particular show, geez, you and I, we're building for a 5,000 entrant contest every week. So that's not what we're trying to do. And you don't have to have the nuts. I think as we've talked about in the past, like one of the key takeaways in just kind of recognizing when you're building your roster is what type of contest am I in? Because as the number of entrants decrease, the more forgiving you get to be with, how close to the optimal you have to be. When you're in one of those lottos, the $3 20 max, the big $5, the Millie Maker, the $20 Millie Maker, like you have to get pretty close to the optimal to end up winning. But when you're in a 5,000 person contest, you really don't. You've got a lot of leeway.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're talking, speaking of single entry, I wanted to briefly just ask your thoughts on this. So let's say you're kind of like a player who wants to be in single entry contests, but you don't want to just play 1 or 2 lineups. Say you want to play 10 to 15 lineups, and you want to do it all on DraftKings. DraftKings has those different levels of single entry. So I don't know, depending on your bankroll, maybe you want to play 200 a weekend, 400 a weekend. How do you spread that out in a smart way? And also, let's say you want to play the $50 single entry, you want to play the 27, you want to play all the 12s single entries again on DraftKings, maybe some 3-entry maxes. I know they have a $15 3-entry max as well. I was looking at some of these earlier. How do you figure out which one to put in the 50, versus the 27? Because as we all know, I've done this before. It's like I'll put in 10 lineups, mostly in single entry contests, and my best lineups end up being the ones in the $5 or the $12, where the $50 one is a loser, and then I'm down for the week, even though maybe I had more lineups cash than not.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I think I'll try to answer that twofold. So I think the first thing is just contest selection in general. And every week I put out a contest selection article that actually gets posted on X/Twitter on the 1 Week Season account, which kind of talks about the type of contests with some of the flattest payout structures, like lowest rake, things like that, at each different kind of pricing tier. Like if you're low stakes, if you're playing $50 or less a week, or maybe you're mid stakes and you're playing $250 a less a week, or higher stakes. I kind of lay out what I think are some of the best contests in terms of sustainability for you as a DFS player, as well as still having, some decent payouts as well. Because if you're just going for sustainability, like you would just play 100% cash games. You just do 50-50s and double ups. But I think for most people, like you want to have a little bit of that thrill of being able to chase some type of higher end prize. Doesn't have to be $1 million, but it's tough to just say, oh well, I entered a $20 contest and I could win 36, and a double up. Obviously there's some rake, I think people want the chance to be able to win 5, 10, 20 grand. And so there are some good contests that are structured well, and I try to put those out every week. So if you don't already follow the 1 week season Twitter/X account, I think that's something totally something you should do. It's free content, and we put out a lot of great stuff every week. And then to kind of get to the second part of your question, so for me, like I play a lot of those single entries, and I will do like the main and the secondary for, let's say the $50 or the $27 or the $12 or the $100. They'll have two different contests, and so like on my roster review show, we always review a $50 single entry. Like I always enter the main $50 single entry, which is somewhere around like 5,000 entrants, and then I'll enter the secondary one that's like somewhere around like 2,400 entrants. And they even have smaller ones from there, but those are the two that I do. And I kind of do that at like every price point. And so for me, like I'm just looking at it and saying, who are my biggest exposures of the week generally in terms of stacks? So for me, I try to keep a tight player pool, and I'll play on average like 4 quarterbacks a week. And 1 or 2 of them, like I'll probably have 30% of 2 of them, and then the other 2 I'll have like 20% of. The 2 guys that are 30% ownership for me, like I build 1 stack of each in the $50 single entry or the $100 single entry, and that's kind of how I do it. I try to look at it if if I've got 4 contests that are maybe 2 in the $100 or 2 in the $50, and that's 4 total lineups. I'll put 1 of each quarterback into that, because those are my big bets on the week, and that's where I like to go, and that's kind of how I spread it out. I'm not going to say, okay, like this week I really like Lamar Jackson. I'm not going to run Lamar Jackson lineups in every one of my builds. Like he'll be in one of my bigger contests probably, but I'll spread it out a bit.
So what about like a secondary game stack? Do you try to kind of spread that between those contests as well, or a couple of one-offs, or do you typically say, there's a certain one-off I feel really strongly about, so I'm going to have them both, or do you just kind of, is it more of just a feel thing?
It's more of just a feel thing.
Yeah.
So generally, like I feel like most weeks there's 3 or 4 like game environments that I will build around in different ways. So like this week, on air, like we do every week, like we'll build a lineup, and I'll have a stack of that lineup, generally with 3 or 4 players between the game stack. On my other builds where I'm not stacking, let's say in this example, it's Lamar. And my other rosters where I'm not stacking Lamar Jackson, like I'll still likely have mini correlations of this week it's Baltimore and Washington. I'll still have mini correlations of that game because I'm just so high on that game. And so, I like to just kind of bet on the fact that I can identify what I think are the right game environments. And it's just kind of trying to build rosters a little bit differently.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome, man. And by the way, make sure to check out StatATL's lineup review video. Did it on Tuesday. I checked it. I know you reviewed JM to Win's lineup, and you always review one of your own, a bunch from the OWS Discord, just people who submit. So it's great stuff. Top right corner, check it out. You always do a great job there, Sat. So thanks for doing that once again.
Yeah, thanks, Cheese. I appreciate that call out, and it's awesome that we get so many OWS contributors and subscribers like submitting rosters every week. I generally have 40 or 50 to choose from every week.
Yeah. It keeps you sharp, It keeps you sharp in remembering like the fundamentals. I mean, you kind of always have that first week or 2 of the season where you kind of refresh your memory on, okay, I got to, do correlations. You want to, look at just these different factors, when building lineups. But as you get into the middle of the season, sometimes you can almost forget that stuff if you aren't constantly reminding yourself of it. And so it's a good way to stay sharp in that way. So cool, man. Well, let's take a look here at week 6, and I'll give you a game that I like, then we'll jump into the lineup build, and you'll kind of, give us the games that you like as we start to build the lineup process. I'm going to throw one that is probably not going to be on as many people's radars this week, and I don't know if it's on yours or not, but I was looking at these games. Obviously, you got these big 4 ones at the top, the 2 that are above 50 in terms of over under, and then Arizona, Green Bay, the Falcons, Panthers. But next on the list is 43.5, Cleveland, Philly. And obviously the reason I like that one is because Philly's at home. They're favored by quite a bit. It's a little bit more of a lower total. And I'm not certain I'll get here because Jalen Hurts, he's expensive. But I've seen it so many times where it's like a home favorite, favored by 9.5, 10 points. The offense will just crush. And, and the Eagles have actually done this before. Jalen Hurts, I remember a game a couple years ago where he threw like 3 touchdowns to A.J. Brown in the first half, and they ended up winning like 42-10. Cleveland does have a good defense, but this Cleveland team just seems like they're a mess right now. And so you wonder about motivation. And so I feel like this is a game that definitely could go overlooked because of the lower total. People are just not going to really be thinking about, this is a game stack, so they might just avoid it. And I think you could, and I know you're a big fan of correlation, so don't get mad at me for saying it, but you could go just stack Philly, not even have a Cleveland bring back, or you could have Amari Cooper. He's always, in fact, actually, you probably should bring back with Cooper because he's actually held up decently well in terms of fantasy, despite literally just Deshaun Watson is just not playing well. And Cooper has still put up manageable fantasy scores despite that. So if they actually have a game where they're on the same page for whatever reason, he could definitely put up a big score. So I actually like the bring back with Cooper. And then just maybe Philly, maybe Jalen Hurts has a big game, throws 5 touchdowns. Philly wins 42-10. And you get a couple of big scores from like an A.J. Brown if he's back, or Devonta Smith. So that's a game environment I like. And I'll be looking at it because Hurts is just a good. He's an elite player. What about you?
Yeah. So on your Cleveland and Philly idea, like I really like Amari Cooper. Like I'm going to keep burning money on him. Like the underlying metrics are strong for him. He's 8 targets or more in every game, and his price hasn't moved because he's had one strong game, but he hasn't had like one big blow up game, and it will happen this season. For me, like I'm not on the Eagles. Like to me, this is a really tough matchup for Saquon Barkley. Like the Browns haven't allowed a rusher to pass 67 yards all season. They've given up a bunch of rushing touchdowns, which kind of inflates the stats, make it look like it's a better matchup than it really is. And honestly, the same can be said for Jalen Hurts. Like, I don't think a quarterback has thrown for more than 240 yards all season. So, unless Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown are both back, like for me, that's not a spot that I'm going to go. I could totally see, the thought process behind it, and it's likely going to be one because of that low total that is completely overlooked by the field. So, definitely in support of that. For me, we kind of talked about some of the other game environments. For me, it's Commanders and Ravens. Like that's the game this weekend. There's Cardinals and Packers is strong. I do really like the Falcons and the Panthers. But for me, like I think my main focus. It's Wednesday. I put out my Tuesday thoughts, like my first look. And that's kind of all the formation of thoughts that I've done so far. Like I haven't really done any other research outside of that hour or two that it takes me to put those together. But like as of right now, it's I'm building Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels lineups. So that's what we're going to build on stream, Cheese.
Yeah, man. I love it. I love it. Absolutely. Yeah, and it's good thoughts on the Eagles too. Like you said, the matchup is very tough. So, it's a tough spot, and like I said, I'm not certain I'll be going there, but I still probably will just look at it. But yeah, man, Cleveland, they got a good defense, man. So I got the 50 pulled up here, the red zone. You want to do the 4,500 or the 2,300 entries?
Either of them is fine. I'll play both for sure.
All right, I'm just gonna hit the 4,500, and just to so you guys know, 25K to first. 75 minimum cash.
Yeah, so it's I think the other contest is actually structured a little bit better, but I think that this is still structured okay, and has a little bit bigger payout to first. So let's let's build this, and we'll kind of build with first place in mind. So
Sounds good.
I mean, I think kind of off the hop, I don't want to say I teased it because we haven't really done any prep on this, but yeah, I mean, let's start with Lamar Jackson. I mean, that's
I do
that's
love
kind of where
Lamar
I want to
this
go. Home team here. I really like this matchup. Like Washington is a secondary. Like I really want to attack. They've given up really big games already. This season, and so I think from here, you have three. To me, you have three different directions that you could go. You could pair Lamar Jackson with Derrick Henry. I think that's a matchup that I think that's a pairing that most people won't do. And I think that most people aren't seeing it as being as strong a spot for Derrick Henry as it really is. So like every running back that has touched the ball, that had 10 or more rush attempts against Washington, all produced solid games. Every one of them I think went over like 100 yards, like Rashad White, Singletary, Zach Moss, James Conner. I think they all went for like around 100 yards and a touchdown, like every one of them. And so we know that Derrick Henry is going to touch the ball 10 times, unless he gets hurt. So, I think that's a way that you can go that's very expensive. And then so you're looking at either his wide receiver one, which is Zay Flowers at 6,500. I think that's viable. It's not as high a ceiling. I don't think Zay Flowers has ever put up a 30-point game in his career. I do like it. I don't mind being a little early on it because I do think that it's coming. He's got 3 games this season of double-digit targets, 10, 11, and 12. And so I think that if he's going to be lower owned, because he is overpriced. If he's going to be low owned, he's kind of the direction that I really like. Or you could pair him with a tight end. You could go Isaiah Likely or Mark Andrews. And that's kind of more of a bet on talent because we all know that Mark Andrews has completely underperformed this year, but he's also 3,900. So to me, with a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, honestly, the same with Jaden Daniels. When you're betting on a ceiling performance from them, that's generally going to come from their legs. So you're looking for rushing, you're hoping for a rushing touchdown. So generally, when I'm rostering one of these mobile quarterbacks, I prefer a single stack. Because it's not a pocket passer. I'm not hoping he throws 4 or 5 touchdowns. I mean, it would be awesome if he did, but I think where he's more likely going to reach a ceiling game is if Lamar Jackson runs for 70, 80 yards and gets a touchdown. And now I'm getting 15 points there, which is as many points as like Jordan Love had last week. And we still cash with that. He's just getting that from his rushing. So let's go Zay Flowers here. I think that's going to be lower owned than it should be because Zay Flowers is overpriced. And then I think when you're running it back, I want to run this back with a pass catcher because the Ravens have basically stifled every backfield that they've faced this season. I think back in week 1, Isaiah Pacheco had the best running back game of the season with like 15 points. This is not a spot I'm looking at Brian Robinson or Eckler. So I think it's either Terry McLaurin or you go down and you grab Zach Ertz. But let's go with Terry McLaurin here and keep it pretty straightforward.
Cool, man. All right, so we got that Washington-Baltimore game. Yeah, and similar to just the thought that I had with the Eagles is Lamar Jackson at home. This is a game where I absolutely could see, even if, and I'm hoping that this is a blow-up game, like a shootout, like both teams are producing, but I could definitely see just Lamar having a huge game one way or the other. So I feel like I have a good feeling about Lamar this week.
Yeah.
Just that whole offense.
So let's kind of look to one of the other games that I really like this week, which is Atlanta and Carolina. And I kind of feel like there's a couple different ways that you could go with this. I want to take a shot here on Bijan Robinson. Like this matchup just sets up so well for Bijan. And same with Tyler Algier as well. Like through 5 games, Carolina's already given up 11 touchdowns to running backs. It's more than 2 a game. And we know that both of the Atlanta backs are going to be involved. So, let's go with Bijan here, and then I think as part of a mini correlation, let's bring it back with Diontae Johnson. I think we'll see a little bit of flop lag from him. I think people got burned by him last week. This is a much better matchup for him than last week, and I think people will be off him. So,
love it. All right.
So from here, let's you know how I like to do. Let's get a placeholder D in here. I always try to go kind of mid-range, so somewhere between like 2,800 or so to like 3,300. That's kind of the sweet spot for me. If you haven't seen the Tuesday thoughts yet, they will be out on Twitter. They should be out by the time this video airs. And so I think my favorite kind of D in that price range for the third week in a row is the Denver Broncos. So let's throw them in here. They're getting so much pressure every week. They're just the defense that I want to target here. And so this leaves us 4,400 for three spots. One of them being a tight end, so we could kind of pay down a little bit there to give us some relief. But we're still going to have a running back spot. So I would say maybe we really bet on this first game environment, and let's throw Zach Ertz in here and just kind of see what that does for us. I think he's 3,700. Leaves us about 4,800 per. Still kind of going to have to punt because most running backs that we like here are going to be in the high fives, low sixes.
Yeah.
So there is a possibility that we do get some value to open up, especially like if Joe Mixon were to miss again. I'm going to just call him Dare. He didn't practice again today. He's missed the last two games, but I think that it's pronounced Ogunbowale, but Dare, as I like to call him, because that's way easier to pronounce down at 4,800. He quietly was really involved last week. 21 touches,
7 targets. You love to see targets.
And he's super cheap at 4,800. So let's go there. And
I like that.
I think from here, a couple different things that we could potentially do. We could kind of play another one-off here, or we could grab a little bit of value in Jalen Polk, who last week was literally on the field for all 60 offensive snaps. He's now going to get Drake May at quarterback. He's seen 6 and 7 targets the last 2 weeks. He's super cheap. So if we plug him in here, we've got 1,300 extra salary. Like, this is a spot where we could go up off of Zach Ertz and kind of improve at tight end. And because I think there are a couple of much stronger tight end matchups, and Jake Ferguson is just out there screaming to me against Detroit, where no team has really had much success running against Detroit. So Dallas is likely to be throwing 30 to 40 times, if not more. Brandon Cooks just went on IR, so just more opportunity for both Jake Ferguson and Jalen Tolbert. So let's go Ferguson here as a one-off that really fits this roster well. And then the only kind of housekeeping, just for people scoring at home, is let's swap Polk and Diontae Johnson so that our latest player is in the flex.
That's right. Let's get Polk into that wide receiver spot.
Yeah, if we had built this a little bit more strategically, Cheese, I wouldn't have to make you do this, but.
Yeah, man, that's my mistake. I should have just put Diontae in there from the very beginning. But no, man, this is great. Yeah, man, good stuff. Obviously, led off with the really that Washington-Baltimore game. I think that's another great spot to target. So once again, man, great stuff. Stat, any other thoughts about the upcoming Week 6 or just in general that you want to impart before we ship this one out?
No, I'm hoping that we see more OWS pennants at the top of leaderboards again this week.
Absolutely, man. Me too. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in, or thanks for watching. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on a podcast, we appreciate it. Stat, as always, man, appreciate the sharp thoughts. And good luck this week, guys. We'll catch you next time.